Why do some people accomplish more in one focused hour than others do in an entire chaotic week? It's not about time management. It's not about working harder. And it's definitely not about downloading another productivity app. The secret is something most people completely miss: a productivity mindset. Right now, you're about to discover why your brain is wired to resist deep work, how laziness is actually a symptom of a deeper problem, and the exact mental shifts that transform scattered energy into laser-focused execution. This isn't theory. This is the operating manual for your brain's productivity system that you never received. Let's unlock it. The Productivity Mindset by Mindset. Reading reveals a truth that most productivity advice completely ignores. All the time management hacks, morning routines, and productivity tools in the world won't help you if your mind is working against you. You can have the perfect schedule, but if your mindset is programmed for distraction, resistance, and procrastination, you'll sabotage yourself every single time. This book isn't about squeezing more tasks into your day. It's about fundamentally rewiring how your brain approaches work, focus, and achievement. Because here's what nobody tells you: productivity isn't about doing more things. It's about becoming the type of person who naturally does the right things with complete focus and minimal internal resistance. The author makes a bold claim in the opening pages: laziness doesn't exist. What we call laziness is actually a collection of mental patterns: fear, confusion, lack of clarity, emotional resistance, and misaligned motivation. When you fix the mindset, the behavior fixes itself. When you try to fix the behavior without addressing the mindset, you're just building a house on quicksand. Most people are fighting against their own psychology all day long. They force themselves to focus while their mind screams for distraction. They guilt themselves into working while their emotional state resists every minute. They wonder why willpower never lasts. The answer is simple. You can't willpower your way past a productivity mindset problem. You need to change the operating system, not just run different programs on broken software. Chapter 1. The Productivity Crisis. Let's start with the uncomfortable truth. We're living in a most distracted era in human history, and it's getting worse. The average person checks their phone over 150 times per day. The average attention span has dropped below that of a goldfish. We have access to more information, tools, and resources than any generation before us, yet we're producing less meaningful work and feeling more overwhelmed than ever. Why? Because we're approaching productivity completely backwards. We think the problem is time. If I only had more time, I could accomplish everything. But people who complain about not having enough time waste hours every day on low-value activities. They're on social media for 2 hours but claim they don't have time to exercise. They binge Netflix for 3 hours but say they don't have time to work on their passion project. The problem isn't time. The problem is mental clarity about what actually matters. The book identifies the real crisis. We've outsourced our focus to external systems. We let notifications decide when we pay attention. We let other people's priorities interrupt our most important work. We let our emotional state dictate whether we show up or make excuses. We've given away our mental sovereignty and then wonder why we feel powerless. Here's the shift that changes everything. Productivity isn't about managing time. It's about managing mental energy, attention, and decision-making. You don't need more hours in the day. You need better command over the hours you already have. And that starts with recognizing that every productivity problem is actually a mindset problem in disguise. Procrastination? That's not a time management issue. That's a mindset issue. Usually fear of failure, perfectionism, or lack of clarity about the next action. Distraction. That's not about willpower. That's about emotional regulation and an untrained attention system. Burnout. That's not about working too much. That's about working on things misaligned with your values or working without proper recovery. When you start seeing productivity through the lens of mindset, everything shifts. You stop looking for the next hack and start examining the beliefs, patterns, and mental models running your behavior. Chapter 2. The Psychology of Laziness. This chapter destroys the concept of laziness as we know it. The author argues that what we call laziness is actually your brain doing exactly what it's designed to do: conserve energy and avoid threats. Your ancient brain evolved in an environment where calories were scarce and physical danger was real. Conserving energy was survival. Avoiding unnecessary risk was smart. Fast forward to today. Your primitive brain is still running that same software, but now it's interpreting challenging work as a threat. When you think about starting that difficult project, your brain perceives effort and discomfort. It triggers a mild stress response. Then it offers you an escape. Check your phone, watch a video, eat something, do the easy task first. You follow that impulse and feel immediate relief. Your brain just protected you from perceived danger and got rewarded with a dopamine hit from the distraction. This creates a vicious cycle. The more you avoid difficult work, the more your brain labels it as threatening. The more threatening it feels, the stronger your resistance becomes. Eventually, even thinking about the task triggers anxiety, and you're trapped in a pattern that looks like laziness, but is actually a sophisticated avoidance system. But here's the breakthrough. Once you understand this mechanism, you can work with it instead of against it. The key is reframing how your brain perceives challenging work. Instead of letting your primitive brain label it as a threat, you consciously label it as an opportunity for growth, satisfaction, and progress toward goals you care about. The author introduces a powerful technique, the 5-minute rule. When resistance hits, you commit to just 5 minutes of focused work. That's it. No pressure to finish. No commitment to hours of grinding. Just 5 minutes. What happens? 2 things. First, starting is always the hardest part. Once you're in motion, continuing is much easier. Second, you prove to your brain that the task isn't actually dangerous. The perceived threat decreases and resistance weakens. Over time, as you repeatedly prove that focused work doesn't kill you and actually feels satisfying, your brain updates its threat assessment. The work that used to feel impossible starts feeling manageable. What looked like laziness transforms into momentum. The chapter ends with this: laziness is just your brain's outdated protection system misfiring in a modern context. You don't need to fight it with willpower. You need to retrain it with consistent, compassionate action. Chapter 3. Building a Focus Fortress. Focus is the most valuable currency in the modern economy, yet most people treat it like an unlimited resource. They scatter their attention across dozens of tasks, hundreds of notifications, and endless streams of information, then wonder why they feel mentally exhausted and accomplish nothing meaningful, the author introduces the concept of a focus fortress, a deliberately designed mental and physical environment that protects your attention from constant siege. Because that's what's happening. Every app, every platform, every device is engineered by teams of behavioral psychologists to capture and monetize your attention. You're not lacking discipline. You're outgunned by billion-dollar companies whose entire business model depends on breaking your focus. Building a focus fortress requires 3 layers of defense. First, environmental design. You must eliminate or reduce triggers for distraction in your physical workspace. Phone in another room during deep work. Notification sounds off permanently. Browser tabs closed except what's needed for the current task. A clean, organized workspace that doesn't pull your attention in multiple directions. This sounds obvious, but almost nobody does it. They keep their phone face up on the desk. They have 17 browser tabs open. They work in chaotic environments and then blame themselves for getting distracted. That's like leaving candy on your desk and blaming yourself for eating it. You're relying on willpower to overcome environmental cues that are scientifically designed to override willpower's second layer, time architecture. You must design your day around focus blocks, not fragments. The research is clear. Deep work requires approximately 23 minutes to reach peak cognitive engagement. Every time you get interrupted or switch tasks, you're resetting that clock. If you're constantly switching between tasks, you never reach deep focus at all. You spend your entire day in the shallow end, working hard, but producing little of real value. The solution is time blocking. You schedule specific blocks of uninterrupted time for your most important work. During these blocks, you're unreachable. No emails, no calls, no meetings, no exceptions. This feels impossible at first. But what if someone needs me? Here's the truth. Very few things are actually urgent. Most emergencies are other people's poor planning becoming your interruption. By protecting your focus time, you accomplish more in 2 focused hours than most people do in 8 scattered hours. Third layer, mental boundaries. This is the most subtle, but most powerful. You must train your mind to recognize when it's being pulled toward distraction and consciously redirect it back to the task. This is metacognition, thinking about your thinking. When you notice your mind wandering toward checking your phone, you don't judge yourself or feel guilty. You simply notice the impulse and choose not to follow it. This is a practice, not a destination. Your mind will wander. Resistance will arise. The difference between highly focused people and everyone else isn't that focused people don't experience distraction. It's that they catch themselves faster and return to focus more quickly. Over time, this practice strengthens your attention control like a muscle. The focus fortress isn't about becoming a productivity robot who never takes breaks or enjoys life. It's about being intentional with your attention so that when you work, you actually work, and when you rest, you actually rest. No more pseudo-work where you're sitting at your desk, but your mind is scattered across 12 different things and you're not really present anywhere. Chapter 4, The Clarity Principle. Here's a productivity killer that nobody talks about. Lack of clarity. You sit down to work, but you don't have a crystal clear picture of what you're actually supposed to do. So you waste the first 20 minutes figuring it out. Or you start something, realize it's not quite right, and switch directions. Or you complete tasks that feel like progress but don't actually move you toward your real goals. This is clarity debt, and it's destroying your productivity. Every moment you spend confused, uncertain, or unclear about your next action is a moment of wasted mental energy. Your brain craves clarity. When it doesn't have clarity, it creates anxiety and resistance. When it has complete clarity, action becomes almost effortless. The author breaks down clarity into 3 levels. First, outcome clarity. What exactly are you trying to achieve? Not vague goals like be more successful or get healthier. Specific, measurable outcomes. Complete the client proposal with 3 package options and pricing by Thursday at 5 p.m. Run 3 miles without stopping by the end of this month. The more specific your outcome, the less mental friction you'll experience. Second, process clarity. What are the actual steps required to achieve the outcome? Most people fail here. They have a goal, but no clear roadmap. So they start enthusiastically, hit the first obstacle, don't know how to navigate it, and quit. Process clarity means you've thought through the journey before you start. You know what step 1 is, what step 2 is, what obstacles might arise, and how you'll handle them. Third, priority clarity. Of all the things you could do, what's the one thing that matters most right now? This is where most people drown. They have 50 things on their to-do list. Everything feels equally urgent, and they spend more energy deciding what to do than actually doing anything. Priority clarity cuts through this noise. You ruthlessly identify the 20% of activities that will produce 80% of your results, and you focus there. The book introduces a powerful daily practice, the clarity session. Every evening, you spend 10 minutes planning the next day. You write down your 3 most important outcomes for tomorrow. You identify the specific time blocks when you'll work on each one. You anticipate obstacles and decide how you'll handle them. You go to bed with complete clarity about tomorrow's priorities. What happens? You wake up and immediately know what to do. No decision fatigue, no wasted morning energy figuring out your day. You've pre-decided, so your brain can immediately engage in execution mode. This one practice eliminates hours of confusion and indecision that plague most people's workdays. The clarity principle is simple but transformative. Confusion is expensive. Clarity is productive. Every minute you invest in gaining clarity saves you hours of wasted effort, false starts, and misallocated energy. Most people avoid the clarity work because it feels like it's slowing them down. I don't have time to plan. I just need to get started. But starting without clarity is like driving without a destination. You'll cover a lot of ground, but never arrive anywhere meaningful. Chapter 5. Energy Management Over Time. Management. This chapter flips conventional productivity wisdom on its head. The author argues that time management is mostly irrelevant if you're trying to work when your energy is depleted. You can have a perfectly planned schedule, but if you're mentally exhausted, emotionally drained, or physically depleted, you won't produce quality work. You'll just suffer through tasks, producing mediocre results while feeling miserable. The shift is from managing time to managing energy. You have 4 types of energy: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. All 4 must be maintained for sustained high performance. Let one drop and your overall productivity crashes. Physical energy is the foundation. You can't think clearly, focus deeply, or regulate emotions effectively when your body is running on fumes. Yet, most people sacrifice sleep, skip meals, avoid exercise, and wonder why they feel sluggish and unmotivated. Your brain is an organ. It requires glucose, oxygen, proper rest, and movement to function optimally. When you neglect your body, you're literally impairing your most important productivity tool. The non-negotiables: 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep, regular movement throughout the day, proper hydration, nutrient-dense food that provides sustained energy rather than sugar crashes. This isn't optional. This is the infrastructure that everything else depends on. Emotional energy is next. Your emotions are constantly consuming or generating energy. Stress, anxiety, resentment, and frustration are energy drains. They put your nervous system in a defensive state where creativity, problem-solving, and focus are significantly impaired. Gratitude, joy, purpose, and connection are energy sources. They activate your nervous system's growth state, where you're capable of your best work. Most people ignore emotional energy management completely. They carry stress and negativity throughout their day, then blame themselves for not being productive. But you can't outwork a dysregulated nervous system. The solution isn't to suppress emotions. That costs even more energy. The solution is to process emotions, build emotional resilience, and deliberately cultivate positive emotional states. Mental energy is your capacity for focused thinking, problem-solving, and decision-making. It's a finite resource that depletes throughout the day, especially if you're making lots of decisions or doing cognitively demanding work. This is why your best thinking usually happens early in the day, and by evening, you're mentally fried. The strategy is to align your most important, cognitively demanding work with your peak mental energy periods. For most people, that's the first 2 to 4 hours after waking. Yet, most people waste this premium mental energy on emails, meetings, and administrative tasks. They leave their most important work for later when their mental energy is depleted. Then they wonder why they struggle. Spiritual energy is about meaning and purpose. This is the energy that comes from working on something you genuinely care about, something aligned with your values, and contributing to something bigger than yourself. When spiritual energy is present, work feels lighter. Motivation is intrinsic. You don't need external rewards or discipline to show up. When spiritual energy is absent, even small tasks feel heavy and meaningless. The author emphasizes that sustainable productivity requires you to design your life around energy optimization, not just time optimization. This means you might work fewer hours but accomplish more because you're working when you're actually energized. It means you prioritize recovery, sleep, breaks, exercise, connection, not as luxuries, but as essential fuel for performance. The people who burn out aren't the hardest workers. They're the people who ignore their energy levels and try to force productivity through depletion. That's not discipline. That's dysfunction. Real productivity comes from working in harmony with your energy, not against it. Chapter 6. Overcoming procrastination. Procrastination is the productivity killer that everyone experiences, but few truly understand. The book reveals that procrastination is never about the task itself. It's always about your emotional relationship with the task. You don't procrastinate on things that feel easy, enjoyable, or aligned with how you want to feel. You procrastinate on things that trigger discomfort, fear of failure, fear of judgment, uncertainty, boredom, overwhelm, or perfectionism. Here's the pattern. You think about the task, your brain anticipates discomfort. Your nervous system tries to protect you by creating resistance. You listen to that resistance and choose an easier, more immediately rewarding activity. You feel temporary relief. But the task still looms, now with added guilt and time pressure. The discomfort intensifies, making future procrastination even more likely. Breaking this cycle requires understanding the emotional root of your procrastination. Are you avoiding the task because you're afraid you'll do it badly? That's perfectionism. The solution isn't trying harder, it's giving yourself permission to do it imperfectly. Are you avoiding it because it's unclear what to do next? That's lack of clarity. The solution is spending 5 minutes breaking the task into smaller, concrete next actions. Are you avoiding it because it's boring? That's a motivation problem. The solution is connecting the boring task to a meaningful outcome you care about. When you're procrastinating on expense reports, you're not really procrastinating on spreadsheets. You're procrastinating on the uncomfortable feelings those spreadsheets trigger. Once you identify and address the emotional layer, the behavioral layer becomes much easier. The book introduces the procrastination protocol, a systematic approach to handling resistance. Step 1. Notice you're procrastinating without judgment. Beating yourself up just adds shame to the resistance, making it worse. Step 2. Identify the emotion driving the avoidance. What am I actually feeling right now? Fear, confusion, resentment, boredom. Step 3. Address the emotion directly. If it's fear, remind yourself that imperfect action beats perfect inaction. If it's confusion, spend 5 minutes clarifying your next step. If it's resentment, examine why you're doing this task and whether it aligns with your goals. Step 4. Take the smallest possible action, not the whole project, just the tiniest next step. Open the document. Write 1 sentence. Make 1 phone call. The goal isn't completion. The goal is disrupting the resistance pattern and creating momentum. What most people don't realize is that procrastination strengthens with practice. Every time you give in to resistance, you're training your brain that avoidance works. You're reinforcing the neural pathway that says, when things feel hard, we escape. Over time, this pattern becomes your default response to any challenging task. But the opposite is also true. Every time you feel resistance and do the task anyway, even for just 5 minutes, you're weakening the procrastination pattern and strengthening your action pattern. You're teaching your brain that discomfort is temporary and manageable. You're proving that starting isn't as scary as anticipating it. Over time, with consistent practice, tasks that used to trigger massive resistance start feeling neutral or even energizing. The chapter ends with a powerful reframe. Procrastination isn't a character flaw, it's a habit. And like all habits, it can be changed with awareness, understanding, and consistent practice. You're not lazy, you're not broken, you're just running an outdated pattern that made sense at some point, but doesn't serve you anymore. Time to install a new pattern. Chapter 7. The Power of Systems Over Goals. This chapter challenges one of the most sacred productivity beliefs, that you need big, ambitious goals to be successful. The author argues that goals are actually overrated and often counterproductive. Here's why. Goals focus on outcomes you can't fully control. You can set a goal to make $1,000,000, but market conditions, luck, and countless external factors influence whether you hit it. When you tie your identity and satisfaction to outcomes you can't control, you set yourself up for frustration. More importantly, goals are temporary. You either achieve them or you don't. And then what? People who achieve major goals often experience a post-achievement crash. They spent years pursuing something, finally got it, felt good for a week, and then felt empty. Because they built their entire identity around reaching a destination. And now that they're there, they don't know who they are or what to do next. The solution is systems thinking. A system is a set of repeatable processes that consistently move you in the right direction, regardless of specific outcomes. Instead of "I want to lose 20 pounds," a goal, you create a system. I eat nutritious meals, I move my body daily, I get quality sleep. The goal focuses on the outcome. The system focuses on the behaviors that naturally produce good outcomes over time. Here's the magic. When you focus on systems, you win every single day. You don't have to wait months or years to feel successful. Every time you execute your system, you've succeeded. Your identity shifts from someone trying to lose weight to someone who takes care of their health. That identity shift is more powerful than any specific outcome. Systems also create compound growth. Small, consistent actions might not feel impressive on any given day, but over months and years, they produce extraordinary results. The person who writes 500 words every day doesn't see much progress in week 1, but after a year, they've written over 180,000 words, an entire book plus extra. The daily action felt easy and unimpressive. The compounded result is life-changing. The book walks through how to build effective systems for any area of life. First, identify the behaviors that, if done consistently, would naturally produce the results you want. For career success, that might be daily deep work sessions, weekly skill development, and monthly relationship building. For health, that might be daily movement, mindful eating, and quality sleep. For relationships, that might be daily meaningful conversation, weekly date nights, and monthly adventures. Second, make those behaviors as easy and automatic as possible. Reduce friction. If you want to exercise daily, lay out your workout clothes the night before. If you want to write daily, open your writing document before you go to bed, so it's waiting for you in the morning. If you want to eat healthier, prep meals in advance so healthy eating is the path of least resistance. Third, track your systems, not just your outcomes. Did you execute the behaviors? That's what matters. The outcomes will take care of themselves if the behaviors are solid. But most people do the opposite. They obsess over outcomes while ignoring behaviors. They weigh themselves daily, but don't track whether they actually did their workout. They check their bank account constantly, but don't track whether they did their income-producing activities. The chapter ends with this insight. Goals provide direction, but systems provide progress. Goals are useful for choosing a direction, but once you've chosen, forget the goal and fall in love with the system. The people who win over the long term aren't the ones with the biggest goals. They're the ones with the most consistent systems. Chapter 8, Sustaining the Productivity Mindset. The final chapter addresses the hardest part, maintenance. Anyone can be productive for a week or a month when motivation is high. The real challenge is sustaining a productivity mindset for years through setbacks, failures, boring stretches, and the inevitable resistance that comes with any meaningful pursuit. The author introduces the concept of mindset momentum. Just like physical momentum, mindset momentum builds slowly and can be lost quickly. Every day you show up, execute your systems, and honor your commitments to yourself, you build momentum. Your brain starts expecting productivity as the norm. Resistance decreases, action feels more natural, but skip a few days and that momentum begins to erode. Your brain reverts to old patterns, resistance increases. Getting restarted requires significant energy. The key to sustainability isn't perfection, it's rapid recovery. You will have off days, you will skip workouts, miss deadlines, and fall short of your standards. The difference between people who maintain productivity long-term and those who don't isn't that productive people never fail. It's that they get back on track immediately. They don't let one missed day become a missed week. They don't spiral into shame and giving up. They treat setbacks as data, not disasters. The book emphasizes the importance of building a supportive environment. Your environment is always stronger than your willpower. If you're surrounded by people who normalize distraction, mediocrity, and excuse-making, you'll drift toward those behaviors no matter how disciplined you are. If you're surrounded by people who normalize focus, excellence, and responsibility, those become your default. This doesn't mean abandoning friends who aren't productivity obsessed. It means being intentional about who you spend time with and what influences you allow into your mind. Are you consuming content that reinforces your productivity mindset or undermines it? Are you spending time with people who elevate your standards or lower them? Your environment is programming you constantly. Make sure it's programming the right patterns. The author also addresses the role of self-compassion in sustained productivity. Most people think they need to be harder on themselves to be more productive. They believe that self-criticism drives performance. The research shows the opposite. Self-criticism triggers shame, which activates threat responses in the brain, which impairs performance. Self-compassion, treating yourself with the same kindness you'd offer a friend, actually enhances motivation and resilience. When you mess up, self-criticism says, "You're so lazy you'll never change. Why even try?" Self-compassion says, "That was hard. You're learning. What can you do differently next time?" The first response makes you want to give up. The second response makes you want to try again. Over time, self-compassion builds a sustainable productivity practice. Self-criticism builds burnout and resentment. Finally, the book reminds you that productivity is a means, not an end. The point isn't to become a productivity robot who just checks boxes and measures metrics. The point is to accomplish meaningful things that align with your values and contribute to a life you're proud of. Productivity without purpose is just busy work. But productivity aligned with purpose is how you build a meaningful life. The productivity mindset isn't about squeezing more output from every hour. It's about becoming someone who shows up consistently, focuses deeply, executes effectively, and does it all in service of something that matters. When you have that mindset, productivity stops being a struggle and starts being an expression of who you are. So, there you have it. The productivity mindset distilled into the principles that actually matter. Let's be honest about what just happened here. You now know more about real productivity than than 95% of people. You understand that it's not about time management or productivity hacks. It's about rewiring your relationship with work, focus, resistance, and action. But here's the moment of truth. Knowledge without implementation is just entertainment. You can watch this video, think, wow, that's really interesting. Go back to your old patterns and nothing changes. Or you can pick one principle, just one, and start applying it today. Maybe it's the 5-minute rule for overcoming resistance. Maybe it's building your focus fortress. Maybe it's creating clarity every evening for the next day. Start there. Prove to yourself that this works. Build momentum. Then add another principle. Then another. Before you know it, you're not someone who struggles with productivity anymore. You're someone who naturally shows up, executes, and accomplishes meaningful things because that's who you've become. Remember, your current productivity level isn't fixed. It's the result of patterns you've been running, consciously or unconsciously, for years. Those patterns got you here. Different patterns will take you somewhere else. The question is simple. Are you willing to install new patterns? Or are you going to keep running the old software and expecting different results? If this video gave you even one insight that shifts how you approach your work, share it with someone who's struggling with their own productivity. Leave a comment with the one principle you're committing to implement first, and subscribe if you want more content that cuts through the noise and gives you the real strategies for building a life of focused, meaningful action. Your productivity isn't about tomorrow. It's about the next decision you make. Are you going to scroll to the next distraction? Or are you going to take one focused action toward what actually matters? That choice, made repeatedly, is the difference between a life of scattered effort and a life of powerful impact. Choose wisely.